Let's try now. All right, everybody give us a thumbs up if you can hear us now. They're like, what are y'all talking about? We need subtitles. Y'all give us a thumbs up if we're loud and clear. We may be repeating everything we just said, Chris. I don't know if they couldn't hear us at all or if they could just faintly hear us. We're getting no sound. All right, I think we're good now. We have a thumbs up. We have a yay. What's up, everybody? I don't even know what I said. I'm going to repeat everything I just said. Welcome in, Market on Main, 1320 Main Street, Columbia, South Carolina. Appreciate y'all joining us. We used to not have problems like this. I don't know what's up. I think we're good now. I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. This is GC Live. We're going to be joined momentarily by my buddy, Laura Goldman. Laura and I have known each other. We're getting old for like a decade now, decade plus, actually. She covers Auburn and Alabama, AL.com. So she's going to join us and talk a little bit about this game from an Auburn perspective. But welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you always bearing with us here on Friday. We're on the road. We are live. Come on out. Come out to lunch. We've had a great lunch. I got a turkey, bacon, avocado sandwich. Chris had the chicken and bacon again. Excellent place for lunch. Excellent place for you to come watch the football game on Saturday if you're not heading on over to Williams-Brice Stadium for the game. South Carolina versus Auburn, Chris. As we said, this is a game coming into the year. You probably don't circle it as a win for South Carolina. I'm still not circling it as a win for South Carolina. When I predict them to win these toss-up games, it normally doesn't go well for my prediction stats. Not that we even keep those, but it doesn't go well for me. I went against my better judgment last week and predicted South Carolina to beat Missouri. That, of course, didn't happen. But I will say this, man. This game is way more winnable for South Carolina coming in than it probably was at the start of the year. Honestly, than it probably was 3 or 4 weeks ago. And to me, it's going to be about momentum. We'll get into the keys of the game, of course, later on in the show. But here on the surface, it does feel like a game. We keep using that word, that it's winnable for South Carolina.
It is. In the last 2 games for South Carolina, Auburn and Clemson to different levels, right? But before the season, most fans, when they're circling their wins and losses and they're maybe picking in their mind their toss-ups, Auburn and Clemson, probably the majority of people probably have Auburn in that loss category. They just about everybody have the Clemson game and loss. Now all of a sudden you've got 2 opportunities in front of you to knock off a couple teams where there's some very interesting storylines. One obviously being the rivalry game, the Auburn game, plenty of little built-in storylines there too. And to get bowl eligibility at home at night, if you're able to do that. So pretty cool opportunity. And you're right. I mean, there are some things in South Carolina that Auburn has shown that South Carolina, if they play well, which is the key, can they take advantage? And there are some things here. Auburn down to, quote-unquote, their backup quarterback, some injury issues. You even look at something like one of their defensive linemen who's playing really well, missing, the first half of this game due to a targeting penalty. There's some things there. Is the psyche of this Auburn team damaged a little bit because they gave up 40 points in a row to Mississippi State in a home game and a home loss? We'll see, but can South Carolina take advantage? That's what I continually go back to.
Yeah, I think we've asked that all year long. Can South Carolina take advantage of opportunities that are ahead of them? Sometimes the answer has been yes against Florida, of course. That's kind of the outlier right now. But other times, last week, the answer was no. Kentucky week, the answer was no. So we'll see. Talking to Brian Matthews of AuburnSports.com yesterday, he mentioned that several times, that he does not know exactly where the collective head, the focus of this Auburn team is right now. Again, coming off that loss last week, I watched a decent amount of that game. Auburn felt like they were in complete control. Yeah. And then Mississippi State gets on a roll. Obviously, Mike Leach, he knows offense. He found something, and then boom, the next thing you know, you're losing at home, and it's kind of a game that you wonder how much does it carry over. Brian Matthews told me he's been covering Auburn for 21 years. He's seen a little bit of everything. I think he has a pretty good feel for the pulse of the program. From an Auburn perspective, he seemed pretty concerned about them going into this game. A new quarterback, obviously, that's very familiar to South Carolina fans, and just a situation that's less than ideal for the Tigers.
If Brian's been, he has been around a while. I didn't realize it was 21 years. He's definitely seen a lot because, as we know, West Auburn is the weirdest
Yeah, a little bit of everything
program in the country with some of the games and the seasons and things that they've had. But yeah, I mean, look, we've kind of said this every week. Some weeks it's been more of if this happens, like the Georgia game, for instance. You go into Athens, that's got to be a situation where Georgia's going to have to turn the ball over multiple times and you're going to have to take advantage. There's other games where, you look at Missouri, there's some certain things that have to happen in that game. You don't do them and you don't win. Like you said, Florida's the outlier. The identity of this South Carolina team has been more in the opposite direction. So a chance to change that narrative this weekend. Auburn's got some things that they've had some issues. So is South Carolina.
Chris, you want to let Laura roll in here? We're going to give Chris some time off. He's going to go eat. And I think that's going to be the easiest way to do it. Laura, do you want to step into the hot seat over here?
I don't know what you're going to ask.
It is literally.
That's okay. You're good.
It really is.
We're joined by Laura Goldman, a friend of mine since we were both at South Carolina together. You've been covering Auburn and Alabama now. How long?
Since middle of 2015. So I got the tail end of Derrick Henry's, middle to end of Derrick Henry's Heisman run, and been covering both teams ever since. And
so you've seen a lot between the two programs.
Yes.
As far as college football playoffs, coaching changes at Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking to me off air about how obviously Gus Malzahn was the Auburn head coach for this game last year.
Yes.
It seems like losing to the Gamecocks for if you're at a major program. Obviously, if you're not like Vandy or something like that, but if you lose to South Carolina and you're at a major SEC program, it can that means bad things may be coming. That was the case with Gus Malzahn. What was it like, Laura, just covering a program like Auburn? What is it like covering a program like Auburn, where it seemed to me like from the outside, Auburn always does the opposite of what I expect them to do going into a year. It's like, no one has high expectations. They're in the national title game.
Exactly.
Then there are high expectations, and Auburn does nothing. It's like, I feel like there's no real feel. And it seemed like Gus Malzahn was kind of on the hot seat for a number of years.
He won enough games against Alabama, just, every other year, whatever it was. Alabama seems to have a hard time in Jordan-Hare. They've only won. I don't think they've won at Jordan-Hare since the Derrick Henry season in 2015. So he's had enough of those big wins that are very meaningful to Auburn fans and that program, to where he was able to hold on to his job for a long time. And for us at South Carolina, I say us because I'm an alum, and they'll always be my team. But their seasons are what we would consider a great season.
Yeah, successful season.
Yeah, but I mean, it's another world down there, and that's not enough for them. They want more national championships, and they've got their rival on the other side of the state who's doing that pretty much every year. And so finally I think when South Carolina beat them last year, they decided it was
time.
Kind of the last straw for Gus. And I really like Gus, and I'm really glad that he's having success and seems to be really enjoying himself down at UCF. So it's been an interesting year trying to see them kind of find their identity, and like you said, and I think Brian said yesterday, they're kind of a schizophrenic team.
Yes, yeah, that people around here can relate a little bit.
Well, obviously, and I will say, being able to cover Auburn and Alabama, I'm usually not able to watch South Carolina games. I always have it on my phone. I'm always checking. But I will say my blood pressure has gone down a lot over the last few football seasons, not having to watch some of these roller coasters that we tend to put ourselves on.
Yeah, so that's got to be interesting first of all, I didn't do a great job of introducing what you do, so I'm going to let you do that. Tell everybody. And Laura's been telling me, what are you going to ask me? And I'm like, whatever comes to mind.
So I'm not really a beat writer, so I know a lot about the teams and I can speak on them, but I'm not like really an analytical stats person. I do more of the human interest. I do documentaries, long form features. So AL.com, as I explained to a lot of people from South Carolina, which I'm from Greenville, born and raised. So AL.com is essentially if the Greenville News, the State, and the Charleston Press Register, that's what's called, right? I think. The three of them were to merge online.
Post and Courier.
That's the Press Register is the Mobile Press Register, which is one of the papers. So it's Birmingham News, Mobile Press Register, and Huntsville Times are all merged together under one umbrella online. So it's where the state of Alabama gets their news. So it's all news, but I do sports video for them. So that's anything from highlights, which is what I'm here to get tomorrow at the game. And those highlights go towards pretty much any other type of video we do, whether it's features, whether it's hype videos, whether it's analysis. We do weekly shows with SEC insiders, different people around the SEC that have insight, that sort of thing. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I shoot, I edit, produce.
And Justin King used to be with AL.com?
So, yeah. Right? So Justin and I have been friends for, Lord, he's a year behind me. I was 2009, he was 2010. We had lots of mutual friends, and we've just been in touch over the years. And when, long story short, I was up in Chicago for a job for a couple years. Didn't end up being a job that I helped launch a digital sports network it's now called Stadium. I don't think a lot of people have heard of it.
I'm familiar.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, it was called 120 Sports when I helped launch it, and now it's morphed into another thing. But anyway, kind of not. I loved Chicago, but it was not really the job didn't end up being what I wanted it to be. And so I was talking to Justin because I had seen some of the stuff he had been putting out recently. He had done a piece on Bruce Pearl, which was really good. And I've always wanted to, in college, I would tell our professors I wanted to be Tom Rinaldi. Like, that was my goal. So Justin had started doing some really cool stuff. And I, called him up and was like, hey, dude, like, I saw your stuff. That's really cool. So he was like, hey, we're starting up a video team down here in Alabama. Do you want to come down to Alabama? And I was like, no. But, I talked to his boss at the time, who became my boss, but they convinced me to come down and cover two, powerhouse SEC schools, which is my background in the first place. And, it has paid off because I've covered some really cool stuff.
Yeah, you've seen some great games. You've had great experiences, I'm sure.
It is not lost on me.
Yeah,
the golden era of like Alabama football that I'm covering, which.
And it struck me. You said earlier, Auburn fans have to deal with Alabama winning to the rate that they have right now, and South Carolina fans. Relate. South Carolina fans are relating to that.
That's another thing, Wes. Covering Alabama in the playoffs. You know what that also means?
That you're covering Clemson.
I got to cover Clemson. I feel like, somebody up there is playing a funny joke on me because the number of Dabo Sweeney press conferences I've
been at them every year, the last few years.
Yeah, but anyway.
So what is the difference in the mindset of Auburn's fan base when you're dealing with them versus Alabama's fan base? Is it a distinct difference?
Yeah. So Auburn is very family oriented. They're the Auburn family. I mean, it's just a very, I don't know how to put it. Like, just they're very like close knit. Like, they just are always. They're just very family oriented. I don't know how else to put it. And Alabama is more business.
The process,
exactly. And it's like they're a lot more. I don't want to say Auburn's not serious about football because they absolutely are, but it's more. I don't want to say laid back either. It's hard to explain, but Alabama is just more of a like let's get down to business. Let's win these football games. That type of thing. And, Auburn is just, it's almost a little bit more laid back atmosphere when you're down there. They're two very cool atmospheres. Just different. Kind of like us in Clemson.
You said you're going to be shooting some highlights tomorrow.
Yes.
You'll of course be focused on Auburn highlights, I'm sure.
Yes.
But which side do you think will have more highlights in the game with Auburn?
That's a good question.
What can you tell us about this Auburn team? Like, we're not going to ask you specific questions. I'm going to give you the floor. What's your number one observation from this Auburn team this year?
You just don't know. And now that Bo is out, I can't really say this anymore, but from week to week, it was like you just didn't know which Bo you were going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Bo could either look like, he's going to go to the NFL and be an amazing, pro quarterback one day, or, he could completely just look awful.
Like he did here a year ago.
Correct.
Yes.
But, now that's not a factor. So, also, like, Auburn historically has been just a running back heavy program.
Yep.
And that's just, they haven't been able to get that going this year. And they have some good backs, like Tank Bixby, obviously.
Amazing.
And they have a couple other guys that have, are in the mix, but they haven't been able to get that going this year. And, one thing I will say about TJ Finley is the Georgia State game, when he came in, when Bo was struggling in that game, it was a very close game.
Georgia State was winning that game,
yes.
right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's been like a couple months at this point.
Yeah, they were.
The team loves him. Like, watching the bench when TJ went in the game, they were lit. Like, the boys on the bench were just like going nuts. And the fans were really excited for him to go in too. So, and it also just kind of scares me because of what happened last year against LSU. So, but again, we have film from last year. South Carolina has film from last year. That they can watch, they can see what they did wrong. We have film on him, whereas last year they didn't. So I think that's a positive. But it's really hard to say. I don't think anybody really knows. It's a very winnable game for South Carolina, and but it's also a winnable game for Auburn. It just depends on who steps up. But I do think, and I was really excited when they announced that it was a night game.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
I knew Williams-Brice was going to be, especially after that Florida game, people are going to show out, and it's going to be a party in there, and at least until something bad happens. But it's going to be a tough environment for Auburn.
I think that is the key. The Florida game, South Carolina had a couple of good things happen early. Fan base was able to stay in that game. Kids were building from that energy.
Yeah.
Then the fans were feeding off of that. It's a snowball effect. A home field crowd can be a snowball effect, or when things go bad early, it can just be kind of like this, just kind of people sit down, and it's almost like you can literally feel the energy zapped out of a place, and it's just like, so.
If it can be so loud to where they can't hear the calls, that's going to affect the game. So it's like everybody needs to show up and be as loud as possible, because I've watched games where the crowd has literally, at Texas A&M a couple weeks ago, I was in College Station with Auburn, and there were a couple times where Bo just couldn't hear, they couldn't hear him because they were really loud. So it's going to affect, definitely, I think, in South Carolina's favor, at least early on, if the fans can establish, some loud atmosphere, and they can get some, good things going early. I think we have a chance.
So Brian Matthews yesterday, I mentioned this earlier in the show, was talking about the mindset of Auburn's team right now, and how disappointing that loss was for them last week.
Oh my gosh, I was there for that too, and it was.
Yeah, I bet it's one of those things where the air just goes out of the stadium late. What do you I mean, I don't think Auburn's going to be looking ahead to Alabama. Like I think
No.
if they had won,
If they had won last week,
yeah, if they had
absolutely.
won, if they were on a winning streak, maybe
This would have been a trap game maybe for them, but
now it's kind of a different. It's not a trap game. It's a different type of kind of like.
well, I mean, if they had won last week, it would have been kind of a trap game if they had been looking ahead to.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You know
I agree.
what I mean?
Yeah, I think it would have been. Now it's kind of like
No, they have to win.
it's kind of like, but it's kind of like it. What else are you playing for? That was something with Florida when they came in. What else is Florida playing for? If you come in with championship aspirations, and then that's kind of gone. Are you still dialed in? So do you buy into the fact, or do you buy into the idea that Auburn could come into this game a little bit flat because of that, or do you think does TJ Finley getting an opportunity to start, as much as they like this kid? Brian was talking about. He's like, man, I just really love this kid. He's like, he's just very likable.
The locker room loves him.
Yeah, does that maybe?
The locker room loves him.
I think that maybe takes out the whole idea of them just coming out flat. I don't know that happens.
Well, that and like honestly, I mean, they're in a similar situation that South Carolina is, having a brand new coach who is trying to establish something and build on something. So like I think these guys really want to come out for not only their new coach and their coaching staff, and show like we are going to turn this around, and but they also want to come out and play hard for their guy, for TJ. I don't think that they're gonna just be like, oh, we're done. Like, no, they have something to prove now, and they've got to build on it. Otherwise, like, why did they make a coaching change?
Yeah.
Why did they, flip everything around and try, it would be dumb for them to just come out flat and give up. But
it's a big game. It's a big game for Brian Harsin. I feel like it is early. It is early in his tenure. So I'm not talking about like from a hot seat. People are going to start, but just from
but establishing.
Yeah, the general vibe. Just like it was huge for Shane Beamer to beat Florida. That was massive for him to find that win.
Arkansas, they beat Arkansas pretty soundly. Mm-hmm. Auburn did, which I don't think anybody really expected. Because Arkansas was, I don't think they're as good as people thought they were going to be, but they were pretty highly ranked, if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the season. So that was a big win for him. Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Like,
huge win for him. Ole Miss is good.
No, they really are.
They are really good.
That was a surprise to me, actually. And yeah. I just don't know. I mean, both coaches have these like signature wins, if you will. At least, we've seen kind of how it's done, but that was an awesome win,
and they needed. Win
oh my gosh! I was actually watching it in College Station after the Auburn game. I went to walk-ons in College Station to catch the Alabama LSU game, which was on every freaking TV in there because all the Texas A&M fans were cheering for LSU because obviously they beat Alabama this year and they want to win the West. Not going to happen anymore, but there was one TV with the South Carolina game on it, and I'm
surprised there were that many.
One?
Yeah,
well,
in College
it's like
Station.
one of those like Buffalo, all the
they
TVs,
got every game.
But I'm like sitting there craning my neck, like trying to watch, and even though we were up like 20 points, like at that point, it was like I want to watch this win. I want to see Shane. Like I want to see this. This is so exciting. My mom's like texting me, like, "Oh, Shane."
Great moment for him. Great moment for his family on the sideline.
So good. So I'm so happy about that.
We'll see what comes tomorrow. Time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Tell them how they can watch your. I assume it's going to be mostly Auburn highlights, but tell them how they can find your work.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I am @GoodAsGoldman. I usually post all my stuff. Or if you go to YouTube, you can type in AL like the state, Alabama. AL.com, and you can either type Tide or Tigers, depending on which content you want to see. But we've got a lot of good feature content and that sort of thing. That if you're just a genuine college football fan, we've got a lot of good stuff. Just on we have a series called Road to the Pros that my colleague Wes has actually spearheaded.
Great name.
And it follows guys from both teams as they go to the NFL draft. So, guys that are now in the NFL, we kind of follow them through their journey there. So it's stuff like that that's just, if you're a college football fan, like, watch our stuff.
Yeah, go check that out.
It's pretty good.
YouTube.com/Tigers
Just type in al.com Tigers or al.com
okay.
Tide. Just
there
search
it is.
That's
all right,
the easiest.
that's the way to do it. All right, Laura, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you want some lunch, get some. It's on Gamecock
Me
Central.
too. This place is really cool. I haven't
tell
seen it before.
Come on out, Market on Main.
Yeah.
We'll let Chris slide
Love
back
to
in
watch
here.
a game here, man.
No, it's
big screen
the biggest,
right here in front of
the
us.
biggest screen you've ever seen.
It's amazing.
So,
right.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We are again live Market on Main. I'm gonna tell them about our sponsors while they're getting traded out. This is presented by our buddy Clint Hammond, ClintHammond.com. Our presenting sponsor every single day. Clint is the man. Chris, get you slide back in. So, your food good? We'll let you take a little break.
It was awesome.
Food was great, and so let's get into the keys to victory here, man. By the way, you asked me off air, are you going to predict South Carolina win this game? Have you?
That's not my prediction. I made people wait.
Yeah.
I put it on our website, which we have one. Just go ahead and throw that out. GamecockCentral.com. I will spoil mine. I'm picking Auburn by 3. I think 27-24, I think is what I picked. That'll be in the game day guide tomorrow. You can see a little bit more of my reasoning beyond what we're talking about today. I foresee a close one. Fourth quarter game. For me, Wes, I think, did you title this show like Broken Record or something?
I can make it that.
Go change it.
This is the show where Chris repeats himself every Friday.
I mean, I go back to it though. South Carolina has not shown the ability this year to take advantage, right? So it is a home game. There are some things that I think they can take advantage of against Auburn, but overall this team has not shown enough in non-Florida games this year against good competition. They've not shown that ability to finish a game, and so they could, right? I think it's close game, but making the pick, that's my pick. I'll stick with it.
So maybe after the Florida game, Carolina gets a little too much credit for that win.
Yeah.
Or are we at the point now where it's reversed back and people are giving Carolina not enough credit for the Florida game? I mean, they still went out and played well in the game. They still took advantage of Florida maybe not being – was Florida broken or did South Carolina break Florida? South Carolina made the plays in the game. South Carolina's defense played a great game. Florida, the narrative right now is that Florida has quit. Florida scored 70 points last week.
They may have quit on defense.
They may have quit on defense, but dude, you score 70 points.
Maybe the offense didn't have to try that hard or something. No, the way I'm looking at the Florida game now, like retrospect, I think they came in wounded. South Carolina finished the job. So by the end of that game, they were done, right? And I think that kind of finished off probably really the rest of their season. It was that. But I mean, South Carolina played well. Give them credit. They did some things that you can do against bad teams. Like they avoided turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't turn the ball over. They took care of the ball. They made plays. They showed fire. Against Missouri, there were just too many critical mistakes. Like that's the thing that we saw on the road, to where South Carolina doesn't have those. It's probably a different ball game. Or South Carolina makes one more play or avoids one more critical mistake. They play very poorly and they still win that game, but they didn't. So I think it's somewhere in between, like you said. Don't say the Florida game was completely meaningless and there was nothing to it. I don't think you go there. You also don't say South Carolina beat an elite team that night. They didn't.
Yeah, I think it started to sort of twist back towards like, well, it's just Florida. They did still execute. So I think if they play the game they did against Florida tomorrow night, they got a great chance to win.
Great chance to win.
Now that's a big if. And I think I was trying to think of who is the key to this game. And on South Carolina's side, it's Jason Brown.
Yeah.
It's got to be Jason Brown.
Is.
I think, and I may be a little bit biased now because he joined us on the show on Monday. So I'm admitting my bias, but I think he has a big game on Saturday because I think this is when he adjusts to the defenses that have now adjusted to him. You go out first game against Florida, there's no real film on you. Did Florida go back and watch film of him at St. Francis? They probably did, but you don't maybe get a sense of exactly what he brings to the table as a quarterback. We saw very clearly, Shane Beamer has said it, Mark Satterfield has said it, Jason Brown himself has said it, that there was an adjustment from how Missouri played Jason Brown versus how Florida played Jason Brown. They were reacting to his tendencies. And some of those tendencies we found out were pretty obvious. I think we didn't maybe realize when he did the back spin move against Florida that was going to be one of his go-to signature moves. But he did go to it quite a few times against Missouri, and they reacted to it. Well, now you're Jason Brown. You get the opportunity to adjust yourself to what teams are going to do against you. I personally am expecting Jason Brown to have a really good day tomorrow night. And I think looking at what he did against Florida, if you look at the PFF numbers, 0 interceptable passes. So that's not just that you didn't throw interceptions and that, sometimes that can just be because the opponent dropped a few of them. Yeah. But as a quarterback, if they were interceptable, that's not a recipe for success long term. You look at the Missouri game, put the ball in danger quite a bit more than he did against Florida. Also, some of those didn't even get counted because of penalties on Missouri. But to me, if he can continue to limit, like he did against Florida, the interceptable passes, while still giving that big playability. We saw it to Josh Vann several times against Florida. We saw it to Josh Vann on a touchdown pass late in the first half against Missouri. To me, that is the key. When Jason Brown can do those things, that's when he adds an element to the offense that was not there before.
Yeah, and he's capable of doing that. We've seen, we've joked about the Jason Brown experience and all that. We've now had 2 games of it, and we've seen both sides of that. Against Florida, it was basically completely positive. You said 0 interceptable passes. That was one of my big takeaways in that game, just watching it live and even after the game. Jason Brown did a phenomenal job of taking care of the ball. There was only one pass that I thought was even close to putting the ball in danger. And obviously, PFF rated that as...
They disagreed with it.
They disagreed.
That's in 24 throws.
That's great. So then you go, and he's stepping up in the pocket. He's limiting. He's just being smart and savvy in the pocket. Against Missouri, for whatever reason, some of it was schematically what Missouri was doing. Maybe it was the road game. Who knows? But we saw a little bit more of that negative side of some of his tendencies to not take care of the ball as well. And so that is the key for him, because South Carolina's had issues turning the ball over this year. So a lot of that is going to naturally go on the quarterback. They've had issues with not creating explosive plays. Jason Brown can do that. So it's easy to go into every game and say quarterback play is critical. It is. That's an easy key to the game for any football game ever. But in this one particularly, with South Carolina's situation, it's even more so.
Well, and some of it is just these guys aren't robots. Like, they are human beings, so there's going to be a window. Sometimes you're going to play well, sometimes you're going to not play so well. The key is to limit the times you don't play well and to kind of find that baseline of what you're going to be as a player. I also wonder, the first week goes so well, maybe you start to do a little bit more. You start to try to do a little bit more for your team. You start to make a throw. Maybe last week it was week 1 of your tenure as the quarterback. You're saying, I'm going to make sure I don't put the ball in danger. Everything goes well, you're going to start to be like, well, maybe I can make that throw. Maybe I can fit it in there. Yeah. Or you're losing, and you're trying to spark something for your team late in the game. So all these different dynamics and variables play into it. But when it comes down to it, you got to circle JB, you got to circle 15 to say he is the key to this game for South Carolina. Other side, Auburn. What is the key, either a key player or just a key thought on the Tigers if they're going to win this game right over there at Williams-Brice Stadium?
So if Auburn's going to win, I think they're going to have to do a great job on the line of scrimmage. I think about the offense for Auburn. They've got some offensive line questions. Obviously, we know Tank Bigsby's a really good back. TJ Finley, you mentioned the other day, Wes, he could just fall forward and get like 4 yards because he's like 6'18". Yeah. So he's a big guy. They won't run him a lot. He's not Bo Nix, but he's capable. First touchdown last year, LSU on their opening drive, TJ Finley on the keeper. So he's got a big body, short yardage. You can use him. use them on some keepers sometimes. You got to watch for that. But South Carolina's defensive line is a strength of this team. Maybe even just overall. Haven't always played great, but when they've played well, they've given this team and this defense a chance to be successful. So I think limiting Auburn in the run game, which they're going to want to do, staying disciplined with some of the eye candy that they're going to see from Harsin and Mike Bobo, and also finding a way to affect TJ Finley. If Auburn is in 2nd and 3 all day, it's going to be a very long day or long night. So early downs, you got to make some things happen, make TJ Finley uncomfortable.
Here's the thing about TJ Finley. He, like you say, 6'7", 245, 247. He's way up there. Massive kid. He may not be what you would necessarily say, it's a dual threat quarterback. He's definitely not a run first quarterback, but man, watching the way he can move in the pocket, it's not like he's a statue either. And I think he's one of those guys. Some, not just quarterbacks, some players have a knack for like not taking the big hit and kind of just wiggling out to where it's more of a glancing blow as opposed to a direct shot. Did you see his touchdown against Laura and I were talking about earlier, Georgia State game? The late touchdown against Georgia State where he really should have been sacked and he rolled backwards, made a couple of guys miss, and then flung the ball into the end zone with a couple of other defenders coming in on him. He's not a guy that you can count on just sitting in there and taking hits either. So to me, if you have a shot at this guy, you got to get him down. It's not going to be a thing where if you just beat the man in front of you, you're the defensive end, you get a great pass rush, then it's going to be an instant sack. You're going to have to earn getting him on the ground because A, he's massive, but B, he can just move around in the pocket pretty well. I think the key, though, you got to just affect him enough because I don't know if he's the most accurate quarterback. He's got a massive arm. Like he can make every throw. It might be the biggest arm in Carolina off the top of my head. Probably the strongest arm Carolina has faced this year. Can you think of anybody off the top of your head who's got a stronger arm? One of the strongest arms we've seen Carolina play the last couple of years. But he can miss too. Like he's not the most accurate kid in the world. So you got to affect him, not let him get into a rhythm and take advantage. I think there'll be opportunities for Carolina to get off the field defensively when he misses throws here and there, but you have to be able to take advantage of it.
Got to take advantage of it. And so, that's definitely for me, that's Auburn's key. Two keys for Auburn, the way that they play on the line of scrimmage, because we saw, Missouri's defensive line gave Carolina fits last year. So both sides for Auburn, line of scrimmage, I think are going to be big because if you're running the ball, if TJ Finley has time to survey, like you said, he can throw the football. This isn't just any backup. He's a really talented kid. So that's an issue. The other thing for Auburn, and this is obvious, this is going to go for both teams. I say this every time it's a closely matched game. I mean, you got to watch the turnover battle. Why did Auburn lose when they came in here last year? Turned the ball over too much. And so that's going to be a critical factor as well.
Yeah, they've not been a big deep ball team from what I've seen statistically, but Finley does have a strong enough arm. If their receivers can get deep, he can make those throws, and it kind of breaks your defense. Like if you don't get pressure on him, you're gonna be able to. Those guys will have time to get open. I feel like, and he actually can stretch the field. Most quarterbacks, it's I hate to bring up bad memories for Carolina fans. It's like facing Trevor Lawrence when if you're sitting there. If you have 5 seconds to throw and a quarterback that can throw the ball 65 yards down the field, eventually the defense gets stretched out to the point that somebody has to be open. So I think that's another reason you have to put pressure on him is because when the defense keeps getting expanded out, those routes get deeper and deeper down the field. A lot of quarterbacks are limited by, I can't throw the ball 65 yards. He can. Yeah. And he makes it look easy doing it. So I think that's something to keep an eye on because Carolina has – Auburn hasn't been a deep ball team, but Carolina has given up some deep balls. Actually, the last 2 games, even though we hadn't seen that most of the year, the last 2 games, they've been vulnerable to that. So I think that'll be something to watch tomorrow as well. All right, before we get out of here, what else have we not hit this week that needs to be hit on, Chris?
Well, one thing, this might be a small thing, might not. Anders Carlson, Auburn's kicker, down with an ACL injury. Fully admit, don't know the thing about whoever might be kicking. Did not get that deep down into the research jar this week, Wes, but Anders Carlson, really good kicker. He's also out. Carolina's been solid most of the season on special teams. They've even made some big plays. They've been solid. It's another, again, closely matched game. That might be a critical area to watch for. Just noteworthy. Just something to tuck away. Auburn, when they come out there, they will be dealing with a backup kicker. Will there be some adventures on that front? Don't know.
So Chris, I looked stat of the week, stat of the day. This is not from Gamecock Russ, but it can still be the Gamecock Russ. Yeah, presented by Gamecock Russ, who is going to the game tomorrow, by the way.
That's awesome.
First game he's been to at Williams-Brice Stadium. Laura, Gamecock Russ is the biggest Gamecock fan, other than Kirk Hollingsworth.
Yeah, I was about to say no.
Other than Kirk.
No, I know.
Other
the
than
biggest Gamecock
Chris Fulmer, he's the most positive. He's the most positive Gamecock supporter.
Those are rare
And-
find.
Yes, in Gamecock Twitter. So shout out to Gamecock Russ. This is presented by Gamecock Russ, even though he didn't come up with this one. But Carlson had a brother that was kicking for Auburn before this Carlson was kicking. So y'all got to bear with me. This is live. This is what live streaming does. But I'm trying
the Colquitt family
Yes.
version, Auburn version, or whatever. Isn't there another? I think there might be another Carlson. There's either another Carlson or another really good kicker that Auburn has signed. They always have some good kicker.
Okay.
In Vegas, I believe.
Okay.
So when was the last time that somebody for Auburn attempted a field goal that does not have the last name Carlson? I saw this on Twitter. I'll give credit to the Twitter account Auburn Goldmine.
Can I guess?
You can guess.
Yeah.
Do you want to guess?
You go.
Y'all throw some guesses
I'm
at
going
me.
to say 9 years ago.
What year are we in?
At 21. So you're saying 2012?
Yeah,
See, if you say
Daniel-
2012, you're kind of losing the impact of because I wanted people to be like, oh my gosh, that's so far.
Because Daniel was there for 4 or 5 years. Anderson said, yeah, I'm going to say 9.
Chris,
I mean,
it wasn't quite 9, but
I was
it's
going to be
close.
overly dramatic and think that there was like another brother. Like I thought maybe there's a third brother. I was going to say like 2009 or
But
something.
the guy who kicked it is actually a pretty well-known kicker. So the last time that somebody for Auburn kicked a field goal that didn't have the last name Carlson, Cody Parkey, January 6th, 2014.
Jeez.
Okay, so I was a little off.
So, yeah, 2014.
That would have been the year that Spurrier went for it on fourth down.
I have
every year,
never
right?
covered
Yes.
an Auburn kicker that's not a Carlson.
Yeah, so Laura chiming in saying she's worked there
Since 2015.
since 2015 and she's never seen a
wild.
kicker.
That's wild.
That was not a Carlson.
Does Parker White have a brother?
Carolina needs to look into it.
How about
He is needed, or
Small Fry?
an Elliott Fry.
Fry.
Is there an Elliott Fry cousin out there maybe somewhere that can take over for Parker?
Ryan Suckup's son, maybe?
Yeah, there you go. So Parker's
Yeah.
getting very close to breaking the all-time record, I believe.
I think Parker is going to be like Milton in Office Space. Like he's just somehow never going to leave. You know, like he's going to find a 7th year and an 8th. Like he's just going to stay forever somehow. Everybody would like that if that somehow happened.
So I just got a DM, y'all. I follow this guy on Twitter called Stats O'War, and he's one of these analytics guys. And he puts together models on who's going to win the game, kind of like FPI does for ESPN. And ESPN has Auburn as a pretty clear favorite in the FPI. 70-something, I think.
Okay.
Vegas opened at 10, and I think it's all the way down to 6.5.
Is it?
6.5, 7.5.
Very
It's
interesting.
around a touchdown. Depending on when you listen to this, it's around a touchdown. But so Parker here, that's his name. I don't know his last name. He also works for the Football Outsiders, FB Outsiders. They actually do a really good job. His model is the only one I've seen out there that predicts South Carolina to win the game.
Okay.
And so I sent him a DM and I said, dude, what's up with your model? Like, why does it feel that way? And I just got back
That's a long response.
a big old response, and I'm going to try to give y'all a summary of right now. And he says that Auburn's offense is 106th in the country in EPA per pass, which is expected points average per pass. And they are passing it 52% of the time on first and second downs, which is a whole lot, he says. South Carolina's defense has been really balanced, and most teams have tried to run more against them. Auburn's rush EPA is 35th. Carolina's defense is 51st. On the other side of the ball, South Carolina has been pretty balanced, and Auburn's defense, according to his model, has been very underwhelming. Keys to Parker for South Carolina offense will be to continue to have good field position. South Carolina actually has been pretty good in the field position game this year. Auburn is really bad on early downs and allows quality possessions at a really high rate. That's another stat I didn't know about. But basically, I believe that means a quality possession is you're staying on the field a little bit offensively as opposed to a 3 and out. Auburn is 116th in the nation in quality possessions for their opponent. So his model believes that South Carolina's defense will be sufficient enough to frustrate what has been a below-average Auburn offense, and that the Gamecocks offense will be able to keep up to them because of that, even if they are forced to kick field goals instead of touchdowns. So his model, shout out to Parker. Yeah. That's the reasons.
I like
What do you think about that?
What an open-ended question. What do you think about that?
Everybody stopped talking on
I
here,
like
by the
it.
way. I think they tuned out.
Their brain froze, I think. The EPA, wow.
That is a thing.
Oh, I know. I've seen it. Just EPA. There's a lot of stats in there. No, I mean, I think.
Is it expected
I don't know.
points average?
I don't know. I've seen it. I don't know what it stands for. Environmental Protection Agency. He
We need to get our producer. Look that up. Let me know.
He mentioned South Carolina's offense being balanced. But I get balance. I worry more about production, kind of when you look at that. Auburn's offense may have a different look this week with TJ Finley. Almost everything we've seen this season has been Bo Nix. Bo Nix has been responsible for a lot of bad Bo plays. Like, what was that? And also some good Bo plays. So, I don't know. With TJ Finley at the helm, it's kind of a different animal.
The model probably does not account for that.
He could blow up the animal, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, is Bo Nix a Bojangles student athlete?
Yeah.
He is?
I think, well.
Does
No.
Is there Bojangles in Alabama?
There is. I think he does Milo's.
I saw he did. He has a Milo. He was one of the first. He had a Milo's sweet tea, right?
Yeah.
Milo's sweet tea ad was one of the first I saw from a
Yeah,
student athlete
it's
in the
Milo's.
SEC. But
I don't think.
how is he not a Bo?
Bojangles.
That is a
I could be wrong.
huge
but I
missed
know- I know
opportunity.
Might call
Milo's
Mike
for sure.
Eva.
Yeah, call Mike. He'll get it set up. Surprised Mike hadn't popped up around here today. But all right, y'all, that's going to do it for the show. We have gone on and on about DMs and tweets and random stats enough. Appreciate Market on Main for hosting us here every single Friday. Appreciate Laura for joining us and sharing some insight on Auburn. Appreciate Clint Hammond, who is our presenting sponsor for every single show, even when we're not live out here at Market on Main. Clint takes care of us every single show. Chris, tell everybody about Dead Soxy and Primal Gourmet, too.
Yeah, primalgourmetsc.com. Awesome healthy meal plans, delivery or pickup in Columbia or Charleston. Deadsoxy.com, DEADSOXY.com. Check out their extensive catalog of men's and women's socks. 25% off with the promo code COCKY.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you.
Give you a B+ today, man. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us. As always, like, review, subscribe. All the podcast platforms, youtube.com/GamecockCentral. Hit all the buttons, good or bad. Just hit the buttons. We're cool with it. Y'all have a great day. Enjoy the game on Saturday. And Chris and I will see you all Monday afternoon, 2 o'clock with GC Live then. Y'all have a good one.